Hey everybody! Today we're going to dig into mummies, climate change, and how to use transition words to describe some of these concepts. So I'll start by reading an article I've chosen from the Washington Post, and afterwards I'll describe some of the vocabulary and phrases we found in there. And finally, I'll dig into the transition words that helped the author describe these concepts and how they relate to one another. So let's get started. Unwrapped Mummies Reveal Effects of Climate Change by the Washington Post in 2015. About 7,000 or so years ago, a group of people called the Chinchorro lived along the coasts of northern Chile and southern Peru. Their lives revolved around fishing from the Pacific Ocean. Yet, just behind them, away from the coast, was an incredibly dry desert, the Atacama. The Chinchorro were unique in many ways, but perhaps most of all in their burial practices. They created the oldest known mummies on Earth, beating the Egyptians by several thousand years. The Chinchorro's mummies were first discovered in the Atacama Desert in 1917. Unlike the Egyptians, the Chinchorro mummified everyone. While the Egyptians considered only kings and other exalted citizens worthy of mummification, the Chinchorro accorded everyone in the community, regardless of age or status, this sacred right, wrote Bernardo Arriaza. He is an expert on the mummies. Signs of aging. Hundreds of mummies have been unearthed since 1917. More are being uncovered regularly. But lately, there has been a problem. The specimens, more than 100 are held at a museum of the Universidad de Tarapacá in Arica, Chile, have started to decay. The tissue change is reflected in the appearance of dark and bright spots. Marcela Sepulveda, an archaeologist at the Universidad de Tarapacá, explained in an email. Indoors, the change has been slow, but outdoors, mummies are being discovered already damaged, Sepulveda said. When you excavate mummies, you can see the degradation is already there, she said. And the suspected reason? A climate change. The Earth is slowly getting warmer, and storm and weather patterns are changing. Scientists blame some of these changes on humans burning oil, gas, and coal. Arica is often referred to as the driest place on Earth. Now locals say that is changing. According to Sepulveda, the city has seen increases in precipitation, rain and snow, and humidity lately. Everybody says that here, she said. Indeed, weather historian Christopher Burt wrote about Arica in 2013. He said then that weather records from 1971 to 2000 suggest that lately it has been wetter than usual. What's ailing the mummies? This may not be something that can be definitively blamed on global climate change caused by humans, cautioned Ralph Mitchell, a biologist at Harvard University. But it is a change nonetheless. Our colleagues in northern Chile say, it's terribly obvious that the place is foggy, a lot more than it ever was, Mitchell said. He teamed up with the Chilean researchers to figure out what was ailing the mummies. Many mummies found in the 1980s had no problems until 10 years ago. At that point, they started to decay, he said. That alone suggests climate change may be a factor in what is happening. So Mitchell and two other researchers from Harvard worked with Sepulveda to figure out what was going on. They aimed to find out if climate change was in fact the reason for mummy decay. Their theory was that the more moisture from the air had enabled bacteria to start to eat away at the mummies. They studied samples of mummy skin and dried pit skin in various conditions. They examined which tiny organisms were living on and in the skin. The result, Mitchell said, was that the finding that bacteria was taking advantage of a more humid environment to use the skin as a nutrient and start to break it down. These were common skin bacteria, among others. They were able to live on the skin because of the change in environmental conditions. Worldwide examples of changes. The issue around the Chinchorro mummies illustrates just how vulnerable many irreplaceable cultural artifacts may be to a changing climate, human-caused or not. It is something that the United Nations has considered for some time. Its UNESCO department names certain places as World Heritage Sites because of their importance to nature or culture. A 2007 report from the UN agency said climate change was affecting many World Heritage sites. UNESCO says many more, both natural and cultural, could be harmed in the years ahead. The U.S. Agency for International Development is also concerned about what effect climate change will have on World Heritage sites. It highlights an example similar to what appears to be happening in Arica. Buildings in the rare medieval city of Leh in Ladakh, India, were constructed in a high-altitude desert environment and are ill-suited to current increases in precipitation, it said. In other words, the buildings were not made to handle a lot of rain. Archaeology magazine listed yet another example. The burial mounds of Scythian warlords, called kurgans, had been frozen and preserved in permafrost near Siberia, Russia. In this case, it was ice, rather than desert, that had preserved remains for such a magnificently long time. The magazine said that they can be destabilized by Arctic thawing. A change in climate can, once again, mean an irreplaceable loss of artifacts and ruins as the ice preserving them melts. History could fade. Harvard's Mitchell, meanwhile, said he suspects there could be a new climate victim with outdoor marble statues. Historic marbles in the outdoor environment are at risk from climate change, he said. So we may not know exactly what's happening in Arica, Chile. We may not know whether it should be attributed to human-caused global warming either. Yet, the fact remains that damage to historical artifacts and World Heritage sites is an expected consequence of climate change in general. Many of these sites have been remarkably preserved precisely because of the fact that they have been undisturbed by climate for so long. Alter that, and, along with many other consequences, the world could lose some of its history.